Hi everybody. I have just a few stories that have been on my heart to tell from the last few weeks. I have really needed some inspiration for my own heart. Oftentimes I'm the one giving out the inspiration, but there comes a time when I actually need God to place some inspiration on my heart. And it turns out that there is always someone or something that is just rejuvenating my heart and lifting my spirit just when I seem to need it. And that is how I know God is so great and so powerful and all-knowing, because exactly when I need something in my life, He always provides. And the first instance where I was the recipient was a few weeks ago at church when I was serving on the production team. A gentleman that was serving alongside of me happened to give me a piece of paper out of the blue without having knowing a thing about me or my situation, but God had clearly put something on his heart, and he knew, being a former pastor, that when God puts something on your heart, you need to be bold enough to follow through and do it. So that's exactly what he did, and he handed me this piece of paper on a day when I really needed some uplifting and some inspiration. And he handed me this piece of paper. I'll show you. He just wrote it out pretty simply, and it says, "The greatest enemy to your happiness is your fear." And he put this in quotes, and all he did was hand it to me. He didn't say anything, and he just knew that that was something that I needed to hear. And it certainly was, because fear has had such a stronghold on me lately. I am in a storm of sorts that has lingered on for a while. That storm that kind of comes in and it's already really had its way with you, but it seems to just linger, and the clouds don't go away, and you know the sun is there, but all of the clouds of fear seem to be blocking the sunshine that has come after the storm. And that's the case in my life. And the only reason that I am focusing on the clouds instead of the sunshine is fear. And so when this man handed me this paper, I knew that that was a sign from God to put my fears aside and to start to focus on Him and the positive in the situation, and to just really hammer down the positivity that is all around me. And this is what God will happen to do all the time, is to fix our perception so that we focus on what is good rather than what is wrong or what is not going our way. And that is how He sometimes, more often than not, will answer a prayer. And so I knew that that was my sign to fix my thoughts onto what is good and true and positive, and that is what exactly had to happen for me to start to get out of the residue of this storm in my life, is to let go of fear, the stronghold that fear has over my actions based on the thoughts that I keep thinking. And I went away that day with so much more hope and just faith in God and in my life and in the things that God is doing through me. And it turns out that just a few weeks later, I was the one that was put in the position to give some inspiration and some hope to someone, a perfect stranger. I was sitting at the cafe with a book that I had just been led to buy called Facing Change. And I had this book out on the table and my journal, and I was sitting there eating my lunch, and a gentleman comes up and asks me about this book. And it just so happened that that book called out to him because he is facing immeasurable change. I mean, unbelievable change that has happened in his life in the last few weeks. And God led me to this particular cafe. I had many choices, but I followed my instinct, and my intuition is never wrong. So I found myself sitting in this cafe, not really knowing why I was at this cafe of all places. It's not a place that I normally would choose, but God knew that I needed to be there, so He made sure that there was a way for me to be there. And when this gentleman asked about this book, he just nonchalantly, very matter-of-factly asked about the book and if it was a Christian book, and just, I could tell there was something on his heart. And he left, and he came back shortly and proceeded to tell me the storm that was rolling through his life. And it was one of those storms that you cannot fathom, but it happened. And that's the thing, is that sometimes storms roll through and we don't expect them, but we have to roll with them because there's often nothing we can do about the circumstances. They're out of our control, and that is when God will swoop in and teach us to really surrender and lean on Him and grow in our faith and in our trust in Him to work through our situation to bring about whatever His will is for our life. And this man surely needed some inspiration, and he had asked for a book recommendation, and I couldn't think of a book, and I read so much, and nothing came to mind. And I said that I would think about it, and I also offered the advice for him to Google a Christian book about change. And I sat there as he went and ate his meal with his family, and I just prayed for the book to come to mind, and it didn't. But a lot of other things came to mind, some suggestions that I could pass along, and God had put those things on my heart to pass along to him. And before I got brave enough to suggest these things to him, I let fear overcome these suggestions and put a damper on what God had placed on my heart. And so I really questioned whether or not I should tell him what was on my heart. I did tell him to pray, and I prayed for him, and prayer is often the most powerful tool that we can harness during these times of change. But the other things on my heart and mind, I didn't listen to. And that is the thing that God is teaching me, is that when he places something on my heart, I have to be bold enough to listen and follow through. Because it's not about me, and it's not about my fear of saying the wrong thing or offending him. It is about standing up and stepping up for God in that moment, for someone who really needs the hope and the encouragement. And when he walked away, I had that instant feeling of regret that I didn't speak what was on my heart. And that is just a wonderful lesson that I can remember for the next time, because God seems to always place me in the path of people that need uplifting. And that is what he has prepared me to do by putting me through endless storms in my own life. And so I want to remind you that if you're going through a storm, it is for a purpose. And it may not feel like that. It may feel terrible to even think of it from that perspective. But that is something that I want to remind you today. And if you ever happen to be in a situation where you find yourself in a position to give someone some hope and encouragement, make sure that you follow through and do what you know to be right based on what is on your heart. And that is just something that you can know to do when a person crosses your path. Because God often answers prayers through other people, and you can be that person, just like the pastor to my right when I was sitting in church needing some inspiration, and just like me, happening to sit at a cafe that I knew I was supposed to be at for some reason that God certainly revealed once I got there. So that is really what I came here to share, and the underlying message that I just want to leave you with is that storms will come and they will also pass, and they'll have a purpose for being there in the first place. And it won't be evident right away. Sometimes it takes a while for storms and tough circumstances to reveal their purpose, but they do have a purpose, and there's all kinds of opportunities to be happy in this life if we choose to focus on God and on the present moment and on what we have to be grateful for rather than fear. Fear will always try to rob us of our happiness, and that is our choice at the end of the day, to not let it ruin the happiness that is at our disposal. So I hope these stories and this message have served you well. I'm praying that your storm, whatever it may be, passes and has endless amounts of purpose to grow you in your faith and to push you into the next phase of your life. Bye.